And we're back.
Yep, we're back. We've got everything set up on the bench here just to do some benchtop demonstrations. We're using the Phonic RTA. It's a PAA3 RTA. So as we go through the changes in the DSP app, you'll be able to see those and how they're represented on the output side of the DSP. You'll see it on the RTA screen.
Much easier to do on the bench.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll be going through these same setup procedures when we get the DSP into a vehicle. Yeah. Like I said, it's just kind of easier to see here on the bench. So we're excited to show you. We've got pink noise coming in from an external source here in the shop, feeding into the input side of our DSP. And then we have the output of our DSP, just the left channel, front, left, front for the input, left, front for the output, feeding into our RTA. So we're going to go into the app. The app is the AX-DSP-XL app.
XL, need to make sure you're downloading that XL app. There are a couple previous versions.
Yep.
For a couple previous DSPs out there, but you want to make sure that you're on the XL app.
Yep, and the XL is DSP-X and DSP-L. So with the app open, you're going to go to Bluetooth connections, and you're going to scan for the DSP. Once it comes up, you'll select the DSP. And it's going to download the information. It's going to communicate back and forth with the DSP and the app and download any information from the DSP so it can properly display on the app.
Yeah, so any save state you had in there, previous configurations, the only way to blank that out is to reset it to default. Otherwise, it's going to read it live and bring it straight over to that app.
That's right. And when it does connect, it's going to bring you to the configuration screen. Now, this is an important screen because this is where you do all of your setup, right? So, Aaron, if you don't mind, let's unplug this the pink noise here, and we're going to see the audio go away. So, one of the first things that we recommend whenever installing the DSP is you want to make sure that the signal is from the output side is going out to your equipment, right?
Yeah.
So the best way to do that is to hit this button called Identify. And the button called Identify, actually I'm going to go into the inputs here. We'll go a little bit ahead of schedule. The Identify will send a chime. It's a chime located on the actual DSP through the output of your RCAs, through the outputs to each channel.
Yeah.
So when I hit Identify,
there you go. You
can see the chime and the overall level of that chime as well. So we know that the output side of our DSP is working. Yeah. It's a great way to check that side of the DSP. Our reset to defaults is what you were just mentioning a minute ago. That'll basically wipe the DSP clean and set everything back to 0 and not selected. Vehicle type. You can go ahead and plug that pink noise back in. Vehicle type is, we have vehicle-specific applications for the DSP X and L. So this is where you would make your vehicle selection. So from general mode, which is basically like a universal mode, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So
it's a generic, you use general mode for aftermarket vehicles. You general mode for analog vehicles if you want. You can hardwire from there.
Or some, since there's a head unit shortage, say you got a subpar head unit and you're trying to clean that up because you just can't get that Pioneer.
Yep.
You can use that on general as well.
Absolutely. So we have a full range, of our typical vehicle selections that we cover within the Axxess line, from GM to Ford to Toyota and Volkswagen and Nissan. So a full line. And let's say that we're going to pick a Chevy. And so from the make, we can go ahead and select the model. So between, Avalanche all the way down to a Volt. So there's quite a bit, right?
Yeah, you got some range in there.
Yeah. So let's just leave it on Avalanche. And from there, you have two selections. You have without amp, which is a factory amp.
Right.
Or you have RPO code STZ, UQS, or Y91. If you have one of those RPO codes, which is typically found in the glove box.
Yeah, for that particular year range.
For this particular vehicle. You would select with amplifier. And that's going to basically tell the DSP how it needs to communicate with the vehicle, right?
Yeah, and so that's probably from a technical standpoint or tech support, actually, that's probably the biggest misstep in setting this up. So I just want to take a second, call attention to that because it's super important. Because on these models, especially General Motors, that's going to be your chime. That's going to be your volume controls. That's going to be a lot. So take an extra second, make sure you're putting in the correct information to your DSP. That way you're getting the right communication from the DSP.
That's right. That's right. Very important step. So for display purposes, we're obviously going to leave it on general, but you can see general doesn't have an option for with or without an amp. Now one of the, I'm going to skip over one bullet here, okay? Because that's going to be the latest and greatest feature that we've just added to the DSP. The next button is a lockdown button. Now this button is as important as selecting the right amplifier, whether or not you have an amplifier or don't have an
every
amplifier.
time.
And what lockdown does is it saves any changes to the DSP. So let's say that we went ahead, we selected that avalanche. We selected the avalanche with a factory amplifier, but we didn't lock it down. Well, we're going to shut the app off. We're going to do all of our settings. We're going to shut the app off. We're going to shut the car off.
It's going to sound great until you shut the car off.
And when you cycle the ignition,
oh no, I've got no sound.
It's going to lose its mind when it comes back on. No sound.
Where'd my chime go?
Yep, where'd your chime go? So there's issues that arise because you haven't locked it down and saved the unit or saved the information.
Lockdown is your checkpoint, if you will.
Yeah. And the great thing about it is the app will remind you to lock down. It won't remind you if you cycle the ignition of the car, but if you try to get out of the app or make some settings like disconnect from the Bluetooth, it's going to prompt you, say, hey, listen, you didn't lock it down.
Did you lock me down?
Don't save it, or don't close the app. So you got to remember to lock it down. You mentioned something earlier just a second ago about GM chimes.
Yeah.
The great thing about the DSP is we're recreating the GM chimes. So we have chime control and also level control. Absolutely. So the issues that you run into when when tapping into the audio signal on the output side of those factory amps, sometimes the chime is either too loud or you got to get rid of it.
Crazy loud.
Yeah, you got to make some kind of compensation within the equalization adjustments.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that have actually tuned out. I think it's 233 megahertz or something like that.
I think it's like 8,000 hertz, but
yeah, something like that. Like I know they found it and tried to tune it out as best you can, and even then it's still not perfect.
You lose some quality of the music if you end up cutting out frequencies that aren't supposed to be cut out, all because of a chime. So our DSP is going to take care of that for you, and it's going to allow you to set that chime level exactly where it needs to be. Save in configuration. So save configuration is for installers. It's for the shops, right? We have a shop tablet here. When we go into a vehicle and we make our adjustments, Ford F-150 2015 with the Sony amplified system,
right?
We can make our settings, save our settings, save our equalization, save our crossover points, and label it and label it. 2015 Ford F-150 with the Sony system. And the next time a vehicle comes into the shop, it's a 2015 Ford F-150 with the Sony system. Yeah. Instead of going through all of that setup process again, you can just recall your saved settings.
Oh yeah, it's a great tool because each shop, everybody's got their own brand of speaker they like, an amplifier. Each of those just make a different change. So having the ability to save, say you use that combination on a lot of different vehicles.
Maybe it's a package that you want to sell at the shop.
Absolutely. So this speaker, this amp, this sub, you've already got it saved. So again, saving time during your installation.
That's right. That's right. So save and recall are great buttons for that. Now, the About button here. This is also a very helpful screen for text, for troubleshooting, for the customer knowing and identifying what vehicle they've selected, what version of the app you're on, what version the DSP is on, and whether or not it needs an update if you reference the Axxess website. So up top here, you have About. So this is an AX-DSP app info, AX-DSP-XL app. Version is 3.0. Vehicle data version is 1.10. Now these change over time, right? Because we do updates, right? So knowing when you call tech support, if you have to call tech support, they're going to ask you about this information. The great thing is it's one click away.
And with repetition, you'll get to understand what this information means too, because it takes that digital voodoo I was talking about earlier, and puts it in a format that you can read and understand. You know, once, and especially after you speak to tech for the first time, you'll start to understand those differences. So then you don't have to call. You're like, oh, hey, that's all it is, and I got it.
Absolutely. So now, not only does it have the app and the DSP information, but it also tells you what selection you've made. Or in general mode, it'll tell you whether it has an OE amplifier because it's based off of your selections. So it's great feedback for the installer if you run into any issues. So, there is a secret menu in here.
There is, and everybody do like their secrets.
Yep. Little Easter egg. I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
There you go.
Right? So the vehicle information, if you hit that 5 times, it'll bring up a diagnostic screen. Now, this diagnostic screen is mainly for communication with tech support specifically.
Correct.
And that tells them whether or not, if it is hooked up to a CAN bus vehicle, if it's receiving that CAN information,
right,
and what state the DSP is in. For example, the amp on out or amp on in, the input signal is RAP activated, that other kind of stuff. So it's a great little hidden menu, Easter egg, and obviously it's helpful. Yeah. Especially if you guys have to end up calling tech support. So the last button on here, second to last button, is setting a password. Now, this was an addition from, I think, a year and a half ago.
Customer request.
Customer request, because somebody went into a customer's vehicle at a show and messed with their settings. And not cool.
Way not cool. But, but this is a double-edged sword. Because if you forget this code, it's game over.
Yeah. It's not game over, but it is.
Well, it's
game over for you
tune.
getting your settings back.
Yeah.
So you can set your own 4-digit password, and you can make it, a universal password at the shop. The problem is you don't always maybe want the customer messing with it if it's a specific type of customer, right?
Yeah.
So now, if you do forget your password, again, like we were saying, you lose all your settings, but all you have to do is take it to the Axxess updater, update it, and it wipes the DSP clean.
Factory
and then
wipe
plug it
on
back
it.
in. Yeah. So
factory wipe, back to square one. Hopefully you've saved.
Yeah. Hopefully
you've done a couple of save states
now
in between.
You can recall. Yeah,
and you can recall.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. So now the great thing about the this one is the DSP-X, like we were talking about, is you can select the output channels and what you want them to do. Do you want them to be grouped together, right? So location number 1 is obviously my front left. So I can group this as a front speaker, a front left speaker. I can group it as I can even group it as a rear left or a rear right. I can manipulate it any way that I want within this section of the app, because you're basically programming the outputs. So, and you're telling them how they're going to be grouped together. Now, over here, the location, if I select the location, you're just, RCA number 1. Right?
Yeah.
RCA number 1 happens to be a left-colored RCA, white. Right?
We gave it a conformity, but again, when there's a will, there's a way. You can make it 1 through 10. You can do whatever you want to it.
Left could be right.
Yeah, it's truly how you want to set it up.
It's however you would like to allocate those inputs or those outputs, excuse me. So you can see that we have quite a wide range of locations. And this is location of the speaker, right?
Right.
So is it the front left speaker? Is it front left mid? Is it front left bass? Front left tweeter? What is it? So you can do front left tweeter. For input 2, we can do right front tweeter. For input 3, we could do left front mid. For number 4, we could do right front mid. Okay? Now, within our group of each of these, we can group the lefts together if we choose to, and the rights, or we could leave them independent. And what this is going to do is it's going to allow for independent equalization between the left tweeter and the left mid if we choose to keep them in different groups.
Right.
So we could leave it as none. Now, if we do want to allocate those to front left, now you'll see that we have a red circle there with an M in it.
Uh-oh.
That's the
It's marriage.
primary. Yeah. That's the primary adjustment. So when you go into the equalization settings, you're just going to have to EQ. You're going to be EQing the tweeter and the mid at the same time.
Yeah, together. So,
Together. Now, if you don't want to do that, you want to do them independently, all you have to do is switch them back to none. And now you have the option to do independent equalization.
Each one. Yeah.
So we have some other options here. You can invert the polarity of the speaker directly through the app, or you can mute it. So you'll see that we have pink noise playing on the RTA. I can mute.
Just like unplugging it.
Yep, just like unplugging it, and we can bring it right back. So what I'm going to do, at least for demonstration purposes, is I'm going to group the right tweeter and the right mid together. And I'm going to leave the left tweeter and the left mid as independent controls. Now, you can do this throughout the entire 10 channels of output. You can see we have 10 options here, right? So we can go down, we can do left rear, we can do left rear mid, we can do right rear mid, we can do, let's see, we'll do a center channel.
Which is particularly good with cars that have rear door speakers and shelf units as well.
Yep. And we can do,
Especially because a lot of people like more
another
speakers.
sub.
There you go.
You know, 2 sub. We can have independent subs.
I think those Fusions do have 2 on the back deck.
They do. There are 6x9s, but they do refer to them as subs. They're lower end frequencies. So we can allocate the subs together as rear. So we're equalizing those at the same time. Maybe they're amplified. You have one sub amplified, you have the other one amplified. So from here, we can go into our crossover selection. Now, the crossover, great options. There's a lot of flexibility here within the crossover settings. Again, you're adjusting crossovers per output, okay? So as many outputs as we selected on the outputs page is how many are going to show up in here. So when we scroll down, you're going to see we have 2 subwoofers.
There we go.
We have a center channel, our left tweeter, left mid, all those different options.
No, that shows when they're married as well, right? Just
It does.
individual?
Yes.
Okay.
It's going to show that more on the equalization page, but you can see from here we have options. We have our front left tweeter. We have a high pass filter on it. We have an option for band pass or low pass, but obviously, tweeter, you don't want to do that, right?
Not to get sound out of it.
No, maybe one sound.
One.
And then we have selectable slopes from 12 dB per octave to 24 to 36 and to 48. So now what we can do is obviously show how we have a high pass filter on a 12 dB per octave slope. And I'm going to just drag my finger across my crossover frequency range, and you can see how it cuts those frequency out. And because it's 12 dB per octave slope, it's going to be very gradual. So we're going to go over to a 24 dB per octave. Gets a little bit steeper. 36, a little bit steeper, right? And then 48. So it really starts to attenuate at those frequencies based off of, obviously, your selection of the crossover slope. So you do have the option of selecting a specific crossover by pressing a crossover point by pressing that number. And let's just say we do, let's see, clear, oops, not 15. See, that wouldn't be good for it.
So, and that's a spec you can get off of your tweeter info sheets, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You know, you should be pretty familiar with it, but it's something you can get off the spec sheet. I would give it a little bit more room than what the spec sheet recommends, but you can see just by inputting that 1500 hertz and hitting enter, now I've moved my crossover slope to that specific frequency. So when I go down here to my left mid, I can select bandpass. And just for argument's sake, for what we're doing, I'm going to select bandpass up top here so that you guys can see how the bandpass filter works on the RTA. So again, we have this nice little hump here in the middle, but I can adjust my bandpass filters.
Really squeeze in on them.
I can really squeeze in. And then obviously we can go back and we can adjust the slopes, make them wider,
yeah, broader,
steeper. And we can do that through all of the outputs that we programmed in.
Yeah.
So very versatile, very universal. Once it's set, you know, you can forget it, you know, save it, forget it. Every time you turn on the car, it's going to remember these settings.
Right.
Now, the next page that we're going to be talking about is the equalization adjustment, right? So this is where we're going to adjust our equalizer. And you can see up top here, we've got them all labeled. Left front tweeter, right front tweeter. That one's married with the left right. The front right mid.
Yeah, it lets you know what's together.
So here is the married. Oops. And then there is the front mid. You'll notice that they're all grayed out with the exception of the ability to boost the gain. So you can boost it +10 or you can cut it -10. And you can do the same thing on the tweeter. So you can independently control their levels, but the equalization and the adjustments that you're going to do within the equalizer is going to affect both the tweeter and the mid only on the right side. So now obviously we have our pink noise coming through. We're going to go over here to the left tweeter because that one's hooked up to our RTA, and we're going to start messing around. And you can see that we are starting to affect the frequency response curve of on the output side of our DSP. So this is where we can do all of our tweaking to make it sound just just give it that extra oomph, that
little polish,
better sound. Yeah. So now let's say that I totally screwed all this up, right? And this curve is awful, and there is nothing that I can do. I want to start over from scratch, right? We've got a flat button right up here. Hit that, it returns everything to flat. Now the gain, like I was saying earlier, it's a +10 option, a -10 option. And then obviously we can return to flat, and we're ready to start again. So having that flexibility within the app and how you allocate the outputs of the DSP really can give you a lot of flexibility as an installer. And you know, I'd say one of the other benefits to the DSP is not only flexibility for the crossovers and the equalization side. So the next one that we're going to talk about is time delay. Those are the same type of, what's going to show up here on this time delay screen is the same selections you made in your outputs when selecting and programming your outputs. So you got front left tweeter, left mid, you got right tweeter, right mid, you got your center channel and your sub. They can all be delayed independently. And it's really quick, it's easy to do. You can go in, select the item, the location or the speaker you would like to delay, and enter your
number in
milliseconds.
Yep.
Okay. Very easy, very straightforward. Input levels. So this is another section, more for very commonly used for the GMs, right?
Yeah, more so in GM.
Yeah, because this is where you adjust your chime level. And the chime level, you can raise it or you can lower it. And we will, you can see, so what we'll do is let's unplug that again. So right now I have our chime level on high. We have obviously no output here. And I know I showed this earlier, but under the configuration screen, you can hit identify and it's going to play that chime. It sounds just like the GM chime. So,
absolutely just like it.
Yeah.
Now, just a quick little note here. It does mute that left front channel. So that is not unexpected to, if you have music playing and you hit identify, the music will mute and you'll hear your chime through that speaker.
So we also have clipping level where you can control the DSP season. If it sees a clipped signal on the input side of the DSP, it automatically attenuates by 20 dB. And what that's for is to protect your speakers, your system, right? Now on the fixed level audio, fixed level analog signals coming from factory radios, they're not going to be clipped. And most often, until you get maybe some of the lower end head units, a lot of the aftermarket ones aren't going to clip until you get way, way up high in volume.
Oh yeah.
But if the DSP sees a clipped signal on the input side, it will automatically attenuate. Now, and drop in volume.
Yeah.
So how do you get it back, right? Well, the reason why it's clipping is because the customer's taking the volume and increasing the volume all the way up until...
Oh yeah, they're going to 11.
Yep, drives the input stages DSP into clipping. DSP tones itself down. So when they take the volume and they turn that back down, when it gets to an unclipped signal, the DSP will restore its audio.
Now your GM folks, they should be sort of used to this. General Motors has a tendency to drive the bass down when you turn them all the way up anyway. So
yeah, they do. And the great thing about having the DSP and getting rid of that factory amplifier is that's no longer an issue.
Yeah.
So the output of the GM radio will be a clean signal into the input side of the DSP.
Yeah.
So amp turn on delay. There's a lot of times where maybe you get a pop. Yeah. Something's turning on before something else needs to. Or
pops happen.
You can actually delay the output, the remote turn on, from the output side of the DSP, because it automatically generates that remote signal for you.
Yeah.
Now, if you're going to be powering more than 2 amplifiers, we're definitely going to recommend an amplification relay, because there's not a ton of current capability on the out for this remote turn on wire. So definitely use a relay if you're going to do more than 2 amps. And then subwoofer input. This is another important one, right? OE radios. Let's say it only has 4 channels of output, right? You have 4 channels of input on the DSP, but you also have a 6th one, right? So a 6th one typically is going to be sub.
Right.
Well, what happens if your OE radio doesn't have a sub? How is it going to get that sub signal? Well,
DSP
we can go into the
magic.
app, sub input. We can select sub signal is going to come from a combination of the front and rear inputs, and you're going to have a subwoofer input. So it's going to have that output, that full frequency range output, which it's labeled as subwoofer, but you still have the full range of frequencies. You can make those adjustments within the app. So it's a great option, and because our kits come with bass knobs, like I said earlier, factory radios don't have a way to adjust the subwoofers from the factory radio. So if somebody wants a little bit more, a little bit extra, they have it with the bass knob.
Okay.
And it's going to work through the app. It connects right up to the DSP with 2 wires, piece of cake. So now, next thing, we recently did an update to the app, also to the DSP. But, back earlier, we were in this configurations tab. I skipped over a little tab, little button, little icon.
Little button, big potential.
It's EQ type. So we just added a parametric EQ to the AX-DSP product line. Now the parametric EQ it comes with a graphic 31 band graphic EQ across all frequencies, all bands, all outputs. And we decided to add a parametric option for those customers that are interested in it. Now you can only use one or the other, but what's great about it, when I go in, I select parametric, I hit OK, and then I go to the Equalization tab. You'll see that I have a parametric EQ on all of my outputs. Front left tweeter, front right tweeter, left mid, right mid, center, my 2 subs.
Yeah.
Okay?
Audiophiles are going to love that.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives a lot of flexibility and a lot of customization to the customer. So we have 3 settings. Filter 1, we have EQ setting from 1 all the way up to 10. We have frequencies from on filter 1 here, from 20 hertz all the way up to 500 hertz. And then we have dB gain, plus 18 to minus 18. So you can see how affecting the Q, when I slide the Q up and down, how it affects the overall frequency response of or on the RTA. So we can really jack this thing up here.
Oh, that's
That's
a
nice,
fun
huh?
sound.
So
All
let's
your
see,
music's going to
Q.
sound like somebody's talking with their hand over their mouth.
So we really have the option of really tailoring it to the customer really tailoring it to whatever environment that they're going to be in.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever environment they prefer, listening environment or equalization.
Sound is definitely objective.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
something that may sound good to me and your customer might be like, oh, that's way too bassy.
Yep. Great thing is you can obviously adjust it on the fly with the customer, making small adjustments, seeing what they like, lock it down, save it to the DSP, and you're ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
So now, like I was saying, you have the option parametric EQ for each output that is not grouped, not married
Not
together.
married.
So it's that right front mid is married with the right front tweeter. So
Yeah.
any adjustment that we're going to do is going to affect both of those. So it's a great option, like I said, and it's just a little bit more for the customers.
Yeah.
Right. So we can obviously return everything to flat, just like we could with the graphic EQ. So that's, in a nutshell, that's pretty much how the app works and functions. And we're excited to offer this new feature, the new parametric EQ, and show you just how flexible it is. Not only
Tell you about
just
it,
on the screen,
but show you.
but show you about it, show you as well. So I've got a couple products, just like a quick product overview that I got behind me over here that we'll just take a few minutes and we'll go through and show everybody. So we're going to get that set up and move on to that.
See you in a second.
Okay.